Welcome, everyone, to Stepping Into Your Leadership. I'm your host, Christine Courtney. Our goal here is to give you some actionable takeaways that will help you lead your teams. Thanks for joining us on this leadership journey. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. I am excited today because we have one of my not only dear friends in the leadership studio today, but also a global leader of human resources and DEI work. She's an amazing strategic thinker. She specializes in high performance cultures, creating them, enabling them. She creates amazing work. I've seen it firsthand at a global law firm that she works at. And she's here today to share something that she's very passionate about, which is mentoring. And I'm really excited to welcome Meher Rabbani here today. So welcome, Meher.
Thank you, Christine. So happy to be here.
And if you listened to episode number 7, and if you haven't, you might want to go back and listen to episode number 7, where I was with Blanca Wingfield, where she talked about mentorship and advocacy and having cheerleaders at work that can kind of help you throughout your career. And this is something that Meher is doing and leading and fostering all the time, not just in at work, but also in her personal life. And so I thought it would be great to bring somebody who works in a really large organization and can talk about some of those dynamics when it comes to mentorship and why that's so important. So first of all, Meher, welcome. And maybe you can explain to us as we jump into this topic of mentoring, why that you think this is important for you and kind of how you would define it.
Thank you. Christine, I think for me, mentoring is really important because I am firsthand a person who would not be who I am without my mentors. And I was very lucky to meet someone at the beginning of my career that explained the significance and importance of mentorship. And I think your question about what is mentorship is at the very core of what I think we're solving for today, because so much of activity at work is called mentoring for a variety of reasons. When I'm like, that's not mentoring, and so it's giving it a bad rap, please don't do that. For me, I think mentoring is a very conscious and disciplined approach to utilizing your network, your community of people for specific growth components that enable your career as well as your personal life. So for me, it's not just like, I need a mentor, let's just find someone who I can talk to. It's really being thoughtful that I am being privileged with this relationship, this connection, and I'm going to be very deliberate in how I'm going to leverage it to enhance key components, whether you're looking for someone, and we talked about this casually the other day. What is your objective? I'm looking for someone who's going to teach me the technical to take me to the next level. I'm looking for someone who's going to help me, navigate culture because, I'm in this new place, this new environment, trying to figure out where do I go from here. And then, there's the third one, which is more of, I think, the personal coach. Like I need someone who's going to help me overcome some of my own character challenges, or there's stuff going on in my personal life and I'm just trying to make it all come together. And so I think when I think of mentorship, I look at those 3 buckets. And when people want a mentor or want to be a mentee, I always say, think about it and think about how you're going to use this phenomenon called mentorship, this magic secret sauce that people talk about that makes life happen, and take it forward from there.
Are there certain characteristics or qualities or types that make for better mentors than not? If people are, how do you make sure that you're choosing someone that is going to be those things for you?
It's an art and a science, I think. And I can talk more of how mentorship today is operating in the kind of workspace. And it's almost being done unto people other than people being engaged in the interactive process of finding a mentor. So if I had to offer a tip to someone to say, how do you find a mentor? As number one, ask people who's a good mentor. The grapevine is one of the most powerful and undervalued tools.
Yeah.
Observe people's stories, ask people. Sometimes, I've thought, this person would be a great mentor. And then I've engaged with them and very casually, without directly kind of ask them, so have you mentored people? And they go, God, I find that so exhausting. And you're like, okay, I don't want this person as my mentor.
Note to self. Just scratch that off the list.
So if a young professional is asking me, how do I find the perfect mentor? I'll say it's a bit of an investigative conversation, and think about the criteria that you're looking to enhance using this mentorship relationship, and go seek And in the meantime, like even the fact that they're having a conversation with me and I'm sitting in a situation where I can see a lot of people in different talent across different levels, I can make recommendations to like go talk to them, see, So that would be my tip. Just don't go for someone who's like at the top of their career and like, oh, I want the CEO to be my mentor. I'm like, okay.
Well, why is that a bad idea?
Well, I think it's not a bad idea, but I think it's like you're just going for the title. Mentorship is not about title relationships. It's about really fostering trust and knowledge share and vulnerability. Like, just because someone's at the top of their game doesn't mean that they're going to be the mentor you're looking for. Maybe one day you will get there, but and I'm again putting it in the context of a young professional. I'm like, don't chase titles, chase people.
I love the way you said this investigative conversation, right? So what is that investigative conversation? Like, how does someone start if they're not paired up? Like some places pair you up with someone, right? But if that doesn't happen for you and you were to say to me, go out and talk to them, what would be some good questions that you could see?
Sure. And I can speak to them because I've tried them for myself, and I've also taken the risk of advising people on doing this, following this tactic. Like, you come across someone that is in the organization and you're like, wow, I want to be like this person. I want to grow up to be like them. That's normally the instinct that's kind of driving. Or wow, like they know a lot of great people and I want to be able to meet them and then leverage that later because I think they'll help me move forward. So number one is like observing their position in the firm, in an organization, and the leverage that they have. So I think that's just basic observation. But number two is like, if you're trying to figure out, am I even going with are my instincts right? Maybe you say, oh, I'd love to like just be a fly on the wall and one day watch you in a pitch, and it works. People love having an audience. And, you can go observe them and you can see how they perhaps interact in a meeting or they are delivering, or you can just say, I just want to shadow you for something. I just want to shadow you on a project. And, sometimes those kind of activities lead to like sidebar conversations, or sidebar conversations lead to connections because you're not really trying to gain something out of it. You're just running parallel to this person. Imagine. It's like the team sport. Like you watch a great player and you're like, oh, I want to play like them. You go and watch their games. Go watch them play. Talk to them about what you saw. And that helps you sometimes determine, wow, is this the person I really need to be kind of connecting with? Because it's a lot of work once you kind of get into the relationship or into the rhythm of mentorship.
How so? A lot of work for who? For both parties?
I think so. Look, I would say it really comes down to like the cost of trading hours away from your own work to either help yourself or to help yourself as a mentee or someone as a mentor. But I think if you don't value it and you don't consider it part of like your primary responsibility, it's not going to work. That's why I say find someone who's aligned with it. One of the things I've found is when I've been seeking mentors, asking them, have you been ever mentored? And they'll be, oh yeah, right. And then when you hear from their story, how valuable it is, they're more likely to pay it forward. There are a lot of people who have gone forward in the world without necessarily the, scaffolding of mentorship. But I think those that have are more willing to give it. So even sometimes having that conversation, like, oh, did you ever find mentoring valuable for yourself? And they'll be like, yeah. Or no, yeah, absolutely. It's a great tool. And do you want a mentor? And it starts working that way.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so do you, whether it's in your firm or personally, have had any stories of mentorship where it's gone like terribly wrong or it's been awesome? And this is why, and this is how it helped or hurt in different cases.
Yeah. I think what's fascinating is I'm going to quote you 2 examples that are exactly the same but had different outcomes. And I think then we can dovetail into the real kind of meat and potatoes of mentoring. So first instinct, you start a new job, you go to your manager and you say, I'm looking for a mentor. And they're like, oh yeah, let me tell you, why don't you reach out to XYZ? Job number 1, I did that. And I got paired with someone who was not in talent at all. They actually worked in information systems. And it was an incredibly powerful and helpful mentoring relationship up until I left the job because I relocated. I followed the same logic in the next job. And I said, to my manager, can you pair me up with someone who can be my mentor? And they put me in touch with someone who was in my work stream, in my kind of area of work. Lovely person. We chatted. I did my whole, walk. I love to hear about your story. How did you get to where you are and all that? And it went nowhere. It was like, so nice to see you, so nice to meet you. Lovely, lovely. This was a really good, informative conversation. Dead. Right? Even though we had so much more in common than I have with a director of information systems.
Right.
But, I think that would be my anecdote, that chemistry of like two people vibing is really critical. And that's why, a lot of, I don't lose enthusiasm for the structured programs that we put together, because I'm like, something's going to work. But when I really look back and I do a lot of exits, look at exit data, the recurring theme is that the most powerful relationships are those that are informal, but they've sought each other out. But in some ways, especially in your large organization, that is not an organic process and there's not enough time for it. So the structured approach creates that avenue. Mentoring became very, very I was just actually looking at articles going back. I was looking at pre-pandemic and post-pandemic and how mentoring has been covered as a topic. And one of the articles I read was about this case study at PayPal, where they understood the value and of mentoring, but the way they were using this fancy algorithm to kind of pair people up was just not working. And they innovated by, rather than doing one-on-one pairing, they did circles. So they put 6 people together in a group, and it was a mentoring circle. And then, based on how things went in that initial first round interaction, is after that they started pairing people up.
Oh, so they watched it like a fishbowl, kind of.
They watched it and let the participants also kind of, test out the water before, okay, Meher and Christine, you're being paired together as 2 women leaders. Go have fun. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not so contrived. And it was successful. And, even here, that's something that we are doing, and we do, is the power of mentoring circles, because there's just mentoring requires a community around it. It's not just an individual act.
Yeah, I also loved when I visited, I did some work with Meher's company. And one of the things that was really interesting to watch was how you guys were putting people up in front of large audiences, of saying, like, here's a few people on the stage talking about their mentor-mentee relationships, what's working, what's not, how is this person helped in your career. You were modeling it for the rest of the audience, who I could see almost like light bulbs going off of their head of like, oh, wow, I could have that, or this is possible, which I think is hard, especially the bigger the organization is how do you do that, So, I mean, I assume that all of that stuff is intentional on y'all's part.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. Like it's made to feel like it's light and easy, but there's the more simplified it is, the more complexity there's sometimes behind it.
Yeah.
And I do feel like, you have to approach certain topics in multiple ways. You put in structured programs, you do fireside chats, you do these small mentoring circles and what have you. Like, there's a multitude of tactics that have to be used in large organizations where people are time poor for something like mentoring to work.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I hear the complaints always is the time, right? Time is the biggest. It's never about money. It's always about time on both sides of the mentor and the mentee, right? So we put it off. But what are some of the very tangible positives that you've seen that have made a big difference of maybe in someone's career, in their life, either as mentor or mentee, that makes it worth the time?
I think you said it, the challenge with mentoring is, and that the result is not apparent right away. It compounds over time. And in a culture where we are like one click away and we want the answer, we are so spoiled with Amazon Prime. We just want everything to work like that.
Come on, Amazon Mentor. They will do mentors soon.
Click away, like 2 clicks and you have you have the solution. I think, going to your question, how do you make people realize it, is I think people who are more at the kind of top level of an organization, they see that, mentoring is critical because they have to build the next bench of leaders. And that's not going to happen overnight. They recognize that it's important for problem-solving mechanisms. If you are not talking to people who are working very deeply and closely with complex problems, and you don't have a connection and a conversation going there, things are going to go awry. They understand the risk, management advantages of it. They're pushing. I mean, I think for me, it's been used as a retention tool post-pandemic. There's been a lot of research around it. And so I think people see the value add, but the result takes a while to come. And people get impatient and they're like, oh, this person's just going to leave. Why am I spending so much time with them? Oh, they're just going to leave. It's like, so there's a bit of a mindset where I think those that are looking at it from a bird's eye view have more buy-in. So I'll hear more senior leaders emphasizing mentorship. I'll have more mid-senior management pushing back a little bit, because I think people don't see the value in the same way, the currency and I would say how quickly the result is evident.
Yeah.
It takes a while.
Yeah.
It's not going to be like you go to Yoda and suddenly like you're going to come out as a Jedi. What's not happening?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's true. I had someone reach out to me recently with an email, a niece of somebody that I know that said, that they would love to meet with me. They're feeling out those first conversations, like you said, but it's so hard to know as the mentor, like, how much do I push this, or, do I let them come to me? Do I push in to help? Because honestly, I've got, a million things just like everybody else does on their to-do list every day. And, how much of it do you think is the responsibility of the mentor, and how much of it is the responsibility of the mentee, to take the initiative?
I'll say beware the diffident mentee who thinks it's the mentor's job to do it all. Because they view sometimes, I think, sometimes the relationship is seen that of a teacher and a student. And so we kind of assume the teacher's driving the curriculum, and that's not the case. So, there is definitely a student-teacher component to it, but the dynamic, the power is how it's not organized that way. So people need to, one, understand that. Two, I think a good mentee, like if the people who are seeking out you, obviously you want to see that they have the qualities and the commitment for you to be carving out that time for them. And then being very realistic, like, look, I don't think I can spend an hour doing deep dives. I think we can do 15-minute check-ins. Or like look at your own schedule and try and work it out. And you don't have to deliver in the same way for every mentee every time. But mentees also need to be curious, organized, responsible, engaged. Do you know what I mean? Test them out. Send them an article, send them a book, whatever.
See if they actually read it.
Yeah, and say, listen, ask them, what do you think of this? And if they're not invested, then you're like, okay, kid, this is going to be a tough one. Or like maybe the initial phase is strong, and then you're like, it's getting wobbly. You give them some, they come to you for some guidance. They take that guidance. Ask them, how did it go? Yeah. And if they're like, oh yeah, I was just having a mental conversation, but I just need to talk it out with someone, you're like, okay, you can do that with other people. You don't have to come to me for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. Do the work. Do the homework. Do the work.
Do the homework. Yeah, I say, people are, it's a very, people see mentorship as this like very kind of happy space. It's happy and it's joyful, but it's work as well.
Yeah.
And I think people feel like, oh my God, it's another one thing I have to do. And it is. But I'll tell you, if you look at people who've been successful in life and you ask them what were like the key factors, I will be shocked if there's one person who says, oh, I did it all on my own. They will definitely reference people who impacted their careers, who changed the course, who were their mentors, their cheerleaders, their advisors, their sponsors. It takes a village. It can't be just done all on your own. And we all have different facets in our personalities, in our professional kind of trajectories. And, different people are going to touch you at different points. And the value of the mentoring conversation is like really helpful, because then you can have some formality and intention behind it.
So let me ask you, because, I want to make sure we get to some actionable tips, right? So before we get to the things that you can do to either set up a really good mentoring program, if you're an HR person or somebody that's trying to, with your whatever size company, small company, trying to figure out how to start this, or maybe you're just an individual that wants a mentor. We have some listeners that are interested in that, like what they can do. So we want some actionable tips. But also, I feel like the other day when you and I were talking, you had some don'ts that were great. Like, don't don't do that. Whatever you do, don't do this. And sometimes those are my favorite parts of like home redo magazines is like the mistakes that people make, sometimes those are more fun to learn from. So what should people, let's start with what should people not do?
Okay. So many don'ts, but wait, give me context. Are we talking about mentees or mentors or HR people trying to run this?
Well, I'd say any of them that you can think of. So for instance, I would say one thing not to do is that we've already said. One thing not to do is to expect that the mentor is going to lead the agenda, right? I think that was a good tip that you had, because that's definitely a don't. That's a don't. Also, in just listening to you, what I learned was don't accept that your mentor is going to be the person that is matched to you. Give it a go, but also go out and try to find your own as well. I thought that was a good tip. But any other things that don't work?
I think if you're not clear in what you're trying to get out of the relationship, don't approach a mentor as someone who's going to be your life coach, as well as your career advisor, as well as the person who's going to help you navigate your dating life. Don't do that. Be very clear of why you're engaging with a particular profile for a particular reason. And, we're talking about work here. So I would definitely kind of focus on prioritizing your intention and your objective and being very clear with it at the beginning. I think a lot of people go into a relationship and then haven't quite explained what they're looking for from it in the mentoring context. So don't just go in and say, oh, I just want a mentor and silence. Be clear. Yeah. This is what I'm looking for. That would be my don't. Don't think that if it didn't work with one person, that the mechanism of mentoring is in any way flawed or, oh, this is just silly, or, I'm using this analogy, not because I think mentors are therapists, but like sometimes when people seek therapy and then they don't really click with their therapist and they poo-poo therapy altogether. And you're like, no, it's not a therapy issue. It's like two people who didn't vibe. And that foundation is very important. So don't get dissuaded and dismissive of the realm of mentoring if you've had one bad or poor experience.
Yeah.
And if it's not working, stop and walk away. Like, as I said, the example I gave you, like, it was awesome meeting a person within my space or work, but we didn't. And I was like, this has been really lovely. And if I need to reach out to you, I will. And it's okay.
Right. You didn't burn that bridge. You didn't have to say, you suck as a mentor. I'm out.
I didn't. Yeah. I mean, they're good mentors for somebody else, not for me.
Yeah.
Don't assume that you have to be mentored by people who are like you.
That's a good one.
Two of my mentors that have really influenced me, and look, now I'll talk a little bit about diversity here. Like, it's quite interesting. Sometimes people immediately think I should be paired with a South Asian woman as a South Asian woman, which is very nice. I think it's thoughtful, but I'm not looking for like, because I'm trying to get into the uncomfortable zone of learning something new, and I'm looking for a growth piece. So I think when I look back and I think about people who've really influenced me, are people who are completely outside of like what people would think my mentor looks like. So one example is like Scott Goodson. And if I told people, this is my mentor, he's a white guy who works in marketing, they'd be like, huh? But again, I think don't restrict yourself to just trying to pair up with people who are just like you.
Yeah.
Because there is a wealth of knowledge and information outside of what you think is your profile that will influence your overall success.
Yeah.
So that's one of my do's and don'ts. Some people prefer it, and I don't dismiss it. They'll say, I just want to be paired with A, B, C, D, and that's fine too. But don't limit yourself, is my point.
Right.
And especially, this is advice I would give to people who work in the talent space, like, be creative when you're thinking of pairing.
Okay, what does that mean?
I mean,
like outside different departments or things like that?
Yeah, cross departments, cross locations, cross gender, cross specializations. I think there's more chances that there's less of a common ground, but there are also more chances where there are aha moments. And a lot of times mentoring is also giving people access to people that they would not typically cross paths with. So there's a lot of advantages to that. So that would be one of my things. I don't just put all Department A with only Department A new graduates with only Department A leaders.
Yeah.
Cross them.
I love that because there's a secondary positive effect on the organization, which is it helps break down silos in a very organic way instead of, because you have people talking across departments about things that you wouldn't have planned. So that's great.
Exactly. Yeah, there was this, I think, article in Harvard Business School, and it was about mentoring in the medical profession, and I was kind of intrigued by it because it's professional services, and one of the writers said, it's mentoring, good mentoring. Emphasis on good mentoring is discipline agnostic, and I really like that because if you think about the medical field, it's highly specialized, and you think, oh, what's the logic of that? And then of course, we can talk separately about that article, but I think that was like a really good one.
Yeah, that's great. Any other tips for people as they're maybe for somebody that's a mentee? Any tips for them?
Absolutely. Yeah. I have tons. Be very, as I think where we started, be very intentional about the type of mentor you're seeking. Test it out, shadow them, observe them, see if this is something that was going to work for you. Don't just lock yourself in a mentor contract without even seeing whether this is going to work. And then I think, being organized, efficient, and responsible for managing the relationship, because ultimately, if you think about it, I think mentors gain a lot from mentees, but the person that's gaining the most is really the mentee.
Mm-hmm.
So treat it as your investment. Treat it as your investment in yourself and give it that regard and that grace. There'll be many times where you're going to be told, I was supposed to meet my mentor and then they canceled on me again. This is one of those things where you have to knock on the door. Sometimes it's going to open, sometimes it's not, but it has nothing to do with you. It's a quotient of the nature of the work or the relationship, which, as we said, is time intensive. So don't get dissuaded.
Mm-hmm.
Stay on it. Don't say, I think they're trying to avoid me. Stay on it.
Yeah. I think be creative too, buy them a cup of coffee and just say, can I walk with you to your next meeting? Or just something that is, everything is an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity to learn, but it's also an opportunity to make a good impression. It's an opportunity to look like an idiot too, or to not be prepared, or, that I've heard mentorship have a backlash sometimes when the mentor, we work in one company where there was partners were mentoring young people. And, like you said, it's really hard because sometimes those partners don't remember what it was like to be a new young person. So they're judging them at the level of a senior director, and so they're not quite ready for the mistakes that young people make, and so think about too, a little bit of trying to put yourself back in their shoes, but also if you're the mentee, thinking how do I make the best impression until I really get to know this person and we've built up trust and so forth? Because if this mentorship relationship doesn't work out, I don't want that partner in those partnership meetings saying, when my name comes up, saying something like, oh, they were never prepared for our meetings when I was their mentor years ago. Now all of a sudden, your career is impacted negatively because you haven't put in the work, So
that's a great point. I think that would be solid advice and we talked about, don't try and have the CEO as your mentor when you're a first year straight out of college. The quality of your questions are not going to be impactful. They may not remember what it was like to walk in your shoes. They want to help you, but they don't have time to scratch their head. Pick the person that is right for your level and where you are in your career.
Yeah, not all great players make great coaches, right? Hardly any of them do. So you've got to find them.
You got to find them and pitch yourself to the right level.
Yeah.
Pitch yourself to the right level. And there's a lot of value in peer mentoring or just one level up mentoring because, you're depending on where you are in your career, you're climbing.
You're climbing.
Right? You're climbing. So don't try and jump and fall. And the one thing I'll say is mediocre mentoring is, in my books, bad mentoring, which has so many unintended consequences like the one you described. So stay away from it.
I love that. I'm going to end our day today with that idea of we're not jumping, we're climbing. So climb, don't jump because jumping falls, climbing better. All right, Meher.
No.
Meher, thank you so much for joining us today and letting us take a little deep dive into the power of mentorship and what it can mean for you as either the mentee or the mentor and for your organizations out there. So give it a try. Don't be shy. Be creative. talk about everything as a pilot. That way people don't freak out if it doesn't work. Say, we're going to pilot this mentorship program, and you can then keep tinkering and changing. So take some of your advice too. I'm going to take some of that advice you gave and implement it where we're helping people with their mentorship program. So thanks, Meher Rabbani. It was lovely to talk to you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. I'd like to give a special shout out to our podcast producer, Richard Francisco. Check out our notes for any details. And if you get anything out of this, please follow us. And if you enjoy it, please take a moment to rate us or write a comment. It will mean the world to us. We'd love to hear from you. And if you just can't get enough, follow me on TikTok and check out tlpnyc.com/podcast for more information.